So how did I first get interested in psychedelics? Well, I think like most other psychedelic researchers, whether they admit it or not, most most of the psychedelic researchers I know have had some kind of an experience with psychedelics in their younger years in a recreational setting. It's not true that all of them had, but when I trained at King's College London at the Maudsley Hospital in psychiatry, and I found that when I was doing my psychiatric training and I was openly researching ayahuasca, many of my consultant psychiatrist supervisors would turn to me and say, Simon, when I was younger, I took LSD. And I'm like, okay, that's right. That's fine. I think most people in my experience who are working in the mental health field, who are interested in the brain, interested in consciousness, have had some kind of personal experiences. And so I was no different. My first personal experiences with LSD was recreational, around, I think I was about 19 years old. But it wasn't until I was 26 that I ended up in the Amazon rainforest. And this was in 2015. And I've been working as a psychiatrist, so I'm trained as a medical doctor, and I've been working in the NHS for a few years, working in general medicine, also working in psychiatry. And I was getting pretty fed up with a lot of the drug treatments that we were using. And I'm not the only one who's getting fed up with psychiatric drug treatments. A lot of psychiatrists talk about psychiatry being a failing specialty. It's kind of labeled as the Cinderella specialty. And actually, quite a few years ago, there was a big debate as to whether or not psychiatry should even be a medical specialty. And other medical specialties were saying, well, perhaps you don't need a medical degree to be a psychiatrist because it's not it's more of an art. It's not even that much of a science. Seemed to be the kind of the arguments that were going on. And so I decided to take a bit of a break from working in psychiatry. And to be completely honest, I don't really know what I was doing. I didn't have that much of a plan. I was just kind of seeing where the wind took me. And I ended up in starting off at Burning Man, actually, in the United States, which seemed like a good place to start off. And then traveling down through Central America and into South America. And when I was in Guatemala, I was in a cafe and I found myself sitting next to somebody who was training to be a curandero based in the Amazon rainforest. And this man was telling me all about the work that he was doing with ayahuasca, the indigenous psychedelic that's so common in the Amazon rainforest. And he seemed to be saying that he'd been using it really successfully to treat a lot of the conditions that I'd been really struggling to treat in my own patients back in the psychiatric hospitals. One of the reasons that I was getting so fed up is that patients would just come back time and time again, and it became this real heart sink that you would see a patient, you would treat them. I used to work in inpatient psychiatry with adults. You would treat them and then you would discharge them. And you would just know that they would be back in a few months because that's what happens. And then there's even a term for that. People call it the revolving door syndrome. And so it was just a known thing. That's what happened. And so I was thinking, like so many other psychiatrists, there must be a better way that we can treat our patients. And here we go. We had this man who was saying, yes, I successfully treat everything that you're struggling with ayahuasca. And the reason and the way that I do that, it isn't just because of ayahuasca. It's because the indigenous peoples I'm working with have taught me that the main way that we treat people is through removing energetic blockages, through removing bad energies, and literally calling spirits in from the outside world, and then that heals participants. And as a medical doctor trained in Western medicine, I of course thought, well, that sounds ridiculous. But I'm interested in what he's saying. Let's go down to the Peruvian Amazon, drink ayahuasca, and we'll take it from there. And so I had my first experiences with ayahuasca, which were, they were incredibly profound. It was amazing. But I didn't come out of those experiences thinking, oh my goodness, spirits are real. I must start training in Shipibo-Konibo. Shipibo were the group of people that I was working with. Sorry, that this man was working with in the Amazon rainforest. But I did come out of it thinking, I wonder if anyone's done any research into the traditional use of ayahuasca. And much to my amazement, when I started looking into that, actually, there wasn't much research into ayahuasca at all. There was some research into the Brazilian ayahuasca churches, the UDV and the Santa Daime, and they blend Christianity with ayahuasca. I later went to a few of their ceremonies in Brazil, and they're really quite something to behold. Being in these church ceremonies and drinking ayahuasca, it's remarkable. I would highly recommend it. Um, and there was some anthropological research, but there wasn't really any empirical scientific research. So I went back to the UK and I started applying for research grants for a study that I designed, looking at the effects of ayahuasca on personality, together with one of my colleagues, a psychologist called Nesta. And we quickly got declined by all of our proposals for funding, which was expected back at that time. And so we actually self-funded our first study looking at the effects of ayahuasca on personality. And we got some quite good results. The results were showing that ayahuasca was decreasing how neurotic participants were immediately following their retreats, and then also 6 months later. And that was enough to catch the eye of Professor Celia Morgan, who was based at the University of Exeter. And together, we used a grant from the Medical Research Council, which is part of the UK government, to start looking at the effects of ayahuasca on epigenetic change and common mental health conditions. And that actually formed the backbone of my PhD. So I started doing this PhD into Amazonian ayahuasca and mental health. And during that time, I decided to create the research not-for-profit on Science, and we continued to do research with more researchers from all around the world, collaborating with leading universities. And then we then created On Health, which is a company that runs programs, mainly training programs for people who want to train to do preparation and integration work, both and they learn how to do that from both a medical point of view, so from a Western psychological point of view, we have psychiatrists, psychologists, neuroscientists, and also a traditional point of view. So we have curanderos, traditional doctors, Ayurvedic healers, and Buddhist nuns who are also teaching on that course. And then following that, I started training in Shipibo-Konibo, and I started training in that in 2019. So it's been 6 years that I've been doing that training for. And that completely transformed my worldview. It completely transformed the way that, I think about how psychedelics work, how ayahuasca works, and also how we design our research projects as part of Onaya. So it's really, really important to me and to the rest of the team that the work that we do, all of the work that we do, the research and then also the courses, that they really bridge the worlds. They bridge this gap. That they're bridging Western psychology and science and neuroscience and the cutting edge sciences that we have with traditional medicine, which in my experience are also extremely cutting edge, if not more so than science. And it's really when we blend these two worlds together, I feel that we get the best of both.